United States Secretary of State John Kerry has just returned from France, where he met with French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius in Paris. Among the topics the two diplomats discussed were the recent developments in the Central African Republic and Mali. VOA State Department correspondent Scott Stearns, who traveled with Secretary Kerry, joins us now with more insight on the visit. Hi, Scott, and thanks for joining us again today.
Sure thing, Ndimyake.
Let's start off with the discussion around the Central African Republic and the recent takeover by the Seleka rebels. What was the discussion between Fabius and Kerry on how to deal with the self-proclaimed leader now, Michel Chodogya?
It was the first time that the men had a chance to discuss what was going on in Bangui, and it was important, I think, for them to coordinate just how they're going to move into this post-Bozizé era. As you know, the Obama administration has been critical of the Seleka rebels' suspension of the Constitution and of Parliament, saying that it's needed for the rebels to follow through on their promise to restore some sort of order, both political order and law and order in Bangui. Toward that end, U.S. officials say that looters among the rebellion need to be held to account. Now, I think it was a positive thing so far that they've kept the Prime Minister Tiangai, which is part of the Libreville Accords. But the unknown, of course, is how far, how fast the Seleka rebels move to restore constitutional order. That's certainly something that the Foreign Minister and the Secretary, an approach they want to coordinate.
Now, in the agreement signed between the rebels and the government in January, the agreement was that the elections will be held in 2016 as scheduled. Now, with Bozizé gone and these recent developments, does anything change on that front?
That's really, I guess, up to the Seleka rebels. I mean, I think the United States and France would like to see an election sooner than that. But, you know, what leverage do they have over the situation? I think that's what Secretary Kerry and Foreign Minister Fabius were discussing. The Americans, of course, are at a bit of a disadvantage, having closed their embassy when it looked like the rebels were making that push on Bangui a few months ago.
Any discussion on Mr. Bozizé's whereabouts and what's going to happen with him between the two men?
Not that, I mean, I think it's pretty commonly known that he's in Cameroon, but you mean like where he'll go from that?
Right.
Where he'll go from there? Not to my knowledge.
Okay, well, let's move on to Mali then. What was the discussion centered around on the topic of Mali?
It's an opportunity for Secretary Kerry to hear from the Foreign Minister about the status of French fighting against Al-Qaeda affiliated terrorists in the north, and how the United States continued to provide surveillance backup, basically from these drones that are now based in Niger, as well as help in standing up the African force that it is the expectation will take over or help take over from the French force. You increasingly see a greater internationalization of the war against the militants in northern Mali. You have the arrival of British trainers and the suggestion by UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon that they stand up this UN peacekeeping force to work alongside the African peacekeeping force. So that part of it's certainly encouraging. I think the question now is what happens politically? How do allies like the United States and France help move the political situation forward? I think both understand that the grievances of the Tuareg in the north are legitimate. The reasons for this coup against the central government in Bamako, the unequal development of the country, those are things that must be addressed by and as part of a new political process.
Well, thank you so much, Scott Stearns. And also, I know briefly they also touched on Syria and Afghanistan.
Syria, Afghanistan, the Middle East peace process. As you know, Secretary Kerry accompanied President Obama on the Middle East trip, followed up on some of that with his own talks with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas.
All right, thank you so much, Scott Stearns, State Department correspondent, joining us live there from the State Department.